Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's okay. Hope everyone is good, and more importantly, hope everyone can hear me. We're back from what felt like the longest holiday ever, but I suppose even a weekend break with a 4-year-old and 8-year-old will feel like a lifetime. But it is good to be back, and you know, in the 8 days, it wasn't just over a week since we've last spoken. Wow, a lot seems to have happened, not just in news and some pretty big news events. Some smaller ones might slip under the radar, but I think we're going to have a massive impact on the crypto market, not just this cycle, but beyond. And then price action, not just on Bitcoin, but our beloved Tau. And actually, to be fair, quite a lot of altcoins as I look across at the moment. Certainly meme coins doing well, but most altcoins are doing good. So we're going to try and dive in to as much of that as we can over the next 60 minutes or so. Don't really have any questions to go through, but if you do have any comments or anything else, then please feel free to drop them in the chat box and we'll get round to discussing those. I've got two monitors again, so I can kind of see and keep track of everything as we're going along. But without any further ado, let's dive in. Okay, so standard kind of price action here. Bitcoin on the top. Let's just put it on the big screen there. 3-day time frame. And yeah, you know, we last spoke on this green candle. It's a 3-day candle, but it was the Monday. And we came up to this 106,500 line. That line's been there for a while. And okay, a news event may have driven it, but we dropped right back down. And okay, you can forgive me as my line is technically at 174. But we pretty much turned around on that line, came back up. And then, you know, as I said, sort of Friday into this weekend, we've had a very strong move up, battling that sort of 110 kind of level at the moment. We'll deep dive into that one a little bit later. But one of the other levels we talked about is that psychological level, and the news event that caused this to drop all the way down, you know, pretty much hit that 100k, had a strong bounce from that, you know, an emotional level, to say the least. And we've moved back up. Whether or not we're out of the woods, or this is just, Chris has put, has the video started? Or is it mine? Hopefully the video started. If someone wants to just let me know if the video has started. Otherwise, I'm talking to nobody. And yeah, we'll go from there. But I'll keep on going until someone says otherwise. I won't actually. I'm just going to wait. Okay. Someone's put yes, as all good. Okay, perfect. See, there's always one person just throws me off there. But anyway, Chris, I hope you catch up with wherever it is at the moment. I'm sure you'll zip along to it. Okay, right. Let's have a look at some of the others. So we've got Bitcoin dominance, which again we'll block. And I'm going to spend a bit of time talking about dominance later on. But I think we have seen a nice little pullback over the last 3 days, which is corresponding with the pumps that we've seen in our altcoins. Not massive levels of movement, but nice to see it come back down. I will say that this isn't the best drawn trend line. It's just one I've kind of drawn on. But as I said, I'll talk about it later on. But this is kind of the level that on the 3-day time frame we've come back down to, and we've had some sort of level bouncing off. I'm really thinking this is kind of a make or break. Not make or break sounds like it's very desperate there for Bitcoin dominance. But you know, if we don't hold this, and I think maybe the altcoin one could continue, and that move down to 62 retest down there is something we should consider. But I want to talk about Bitcoin dominance a little bit later on. Total 2, which is everything except for Bitcoin. Nice move up, yes. And I'll say this until I'm proven wrong. But I really am not getting too excited until we're above that 1.25 trillion, 1.26 trillion level. We have been held below this now since, well, effectively February. I know we've spiked above it a couple of times, but not by much. And all the moves, I keep on going back onto this, but you just have a look. You know, its all-time high was beginning of December after the Trump pump from the election win. We got to 1.64 trillion. In that time, Bitcoin has made 3 or 4, if not more, all-time highs itself. And yet actually all we're really seeing from the rest of the altcoin market is that sort of slow bleed south. Kind of reflects on what we were talking about with Bitcoin dominance, what we're going to talk about later. So I'm not there. You kind of know that my portfolio still has quite a decent amount of Bitcoin within it. And this has to be one of the reasons right now, just because I'm not seeing the strength. except for in a few select coins. And thankfully, most of us are in one of those that does seem to show some periodic strength, and that being BitTensor. And with BitTensor, we do look here. So I broke the rule. I did a sidestep whilst I was on holiday, which was fine. Got out at what I thought was a relatively good level. The news event happened with Donald and Elon. Price moved down to sort of 330 or 40 level, but I didn't get to move back in. I got back in late, around about 390. So down about $20 per tau, which, you take it on the chin. Sometimes it just happens like that. 3-day time frame still looking pretty strong. I mean, spoiler alert, we'll talk about it later. I'm not liking how the 1 day is ending up, and I'll explain as to that in a moment. But just going back to the 3-day time frame and these sort of historic diagonal trend levels, we're battling that one. We have gone above it. This center one here, around about 410. We've managed to get ourselves above that, which is great. I've got to be honest, there's going to need to be some level of sustainability. Sorry, some level of breach above 450 before we can get really excited. Just look at, the last month and a half. Just look at the amount of candles that are in and around that 450 level. And so I know there are events going on. I know Simon's been talking about them on Telegram, which are going to help the price. Of course they are, but we need to see that movement pick up. And what I worry about at the moment, and we'll go into in a moment, is are we just running out of steam similar to what we've done in the past? But I do like the move up from 340 that we've seen, been nice and strong. Any of you been able to play that from a trading point of view, great move up there. And any of you that managed to get back in from a sidestep in sort of the mid 300s, then a nice move as well. Actually, yeah, I'll mention it now because last week, this was one of the questions last week, and they didn't put their name, so I don't feel like I'm calling someone out or anything like that. But someone mentioned that they're still in two minds about selling some alts at a loss and moving into Tau. That's been what my thoughts are on that. And whilst I said you've got to look at each case individually, I think the key point from that was just be decisive. Just whatever you want to do, just go ahead and do it. And the reason for that is Tau has moved very well compared to others. It's probably dropped now, which is a bit of a shame because of today's price. It was at 10. It was 10th on the 7-day time frame. It's now dropped to 17 because it's pulled back. But it had made that strong move over the last week. And if you just, I go back to just revisit the answer to that question, just being whatever decision it is, and this is just life decision. Just make that decision. It will either be right or it will be wrong, okay? But the worst thing you can do is just dither, thinking about the decision for far too long and then just being indecisive and not getting it in. So I hope that person, took the time to actually evaluate their altcoin portfolio. They obviously seem like they did want to move into Tau. I hope that they did, because you would have had a great uplift despite today's pullback, and it is probably just a pullback. You had a great opportunity to just sort of really benefit ahead of most other altcoins, unless your altcoins that you were looking to get rid of are the 16 above it. So just to revisit that one there. Anyway, we will go into a lot more detail with BitTensor later on. So last 8 days, I went live on a Monday, and we didn't talk about it because I didn't think it was necessarily newsworthy, but sort of the weekend just before, bloody Elon Musk was awarded the key to the White House by President Trump for services rendered to Doge. And what a great achievement that felt like that was being. And then before you knew it, and before the key was even tried in the lock, this comes out of that, well, what feels like out of nowhere. Elon posts this tweet, which has now been removed, but I managed to find a picture of it. Time to drop the real big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That's the real reason you haven't been made public. Have a nice day. And it just felt like that was a massive breakup from a relationship that obviously had gone very toxic. And then, there was a bit of a spat between X and what's it called? Truth Social, I think, isn't it? Where they were just talking about it. It doesn't necessarily need to go through it line by line. But I think what is put in these tweets, I don't know what you call them on Truth Social, or comments, whatever, thoughts, truths, that's what they're called. It's probably true. And I don't think it was an all of the sudden kind of thing. Back in February, there was a budget And within there was it was announced that there was going to be some governmental subsidies that were going to, end, and a few of those were going to impact on what Elon did, particularly the EV mandate. And I think we actually even talked about that in February when it was announced. And I even think Elon went on to effectively be disappointed, publicly disappointed. Maybe not as far as he went last week on it. But, things just went very sour very quickly. Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. Certainly didn't look like you asked him to leave in this photo after you awarded him a key to the White House. But anyway, everyone trying to save face, and he had to go. So it had that immediate reaction within the market. And I mean, Tesla, the prime example of this, because I think it happened Thursday after the markets closed. And then what happened on Friday? Waterfall. Sorry, this was last week. Sorry, this is right. Tuesday, wasn't it? Tuesday or Wednesday? It was Wednesday. And then we had this massive waterfall moment after the announcement to come back down. Great opportunity for anyone that was able to buy. I did actually buy some more Tesla shares on Friday when I was back in the country. I didn't quite get down at the very bottom. And we can see this actually recovering quite nicely. But, Elon Musk and Donald Trump's relationship was obviously going to have a knock-on effect, on his companies such as Tesla. But like with any big drops at your market, if you're brave enough and you have that, that longer sight line, there's an opportunity to actually buy in there. And it does seem like this is just going to continue to recover to pre-fallout breakup levels. But yeah, it was a really kind of weird sort of thing to go about, and for us, obviously a bit of a shame. I quite enjoyed the dream team, certainly in the election campaign of Musk and Trump and what they thought they could do. And obviously when he first got into power and Doge and everything else, it felt like we were steps in the right direction. But they're two very, not maybe sensitive is the wrong word, but highly strung characters. Whatever, at some stage they were going to have some form of disagreement and fallout. This has happened. Hey, good luck to both of them. I'm still hoping they're both going to be rooting for success within crypto and Bitcoin, but hey, we'll have to just wait and see on the long term of that. I'm not going to bother going into the rest of these. Yes, he deleted that one, and Trump sort of laid down the law and said, look, if he starts funding Democrats, there'll be problems. But anyway, get rid of that one too. But for me, that wasn't the biggest news event. Not in my opinion of last week. Actually, the rumors were the back end of last week that the US and China were going to get around the table and try and sort out their trade issues. And then what we've actually seen is that they have been meeting over the last couple of days in London to try and get some of these sorted. So that big push up that we saw over the weekend, fine, but then we actually saw that nice reaction when the meetings were confirmed and commenced yesterday, taking us from that 106 level to sort of 110. And that's great on the surface, positive news, nice to see Bitcoin and the other markets reacting positively to that. However, we're talking about tariffs, we're talking about trade deals, and we've been here before. All it takes is for both these parties to effectively walk away without any sort of deal, and I guarantee we're going to see a negative reaction to the markets. And this will just keep on going until we get a trade deal. And we're obviously going to get a trade deal. We're not going to go 4 years without a trade deal or tariffs being negotiated between the US and China. What that's going to look like is obviously the difficult thing there. But it's nice to see that's happened. And if we can get maybe not positive resolution, but positive feedback from the conclusion of this initial meeting, then okay, we can sustain that uptick. But as I said, we've been here before. We know it's a very hot topic within trading. It kind of TA goes out of the window. And so just be careful. We don't know at what stage anything may be announced. And if you suddenly see a big red or big green candle, maybe just type in tariffs into the news section of Google and see if anything has been announced or spoken about by that. And it may well be what's causing it there. But it's something to definitely keep an eye on. Other ones which we talk about, BlackRock and the ETFs every week, so it only felt right to talk about this. BlackRock has pushed their fund past $70 billion, the fastest ever recorded pace of an ETF across any ETFs, not just crypto related, obviously, because Bitcoin was the first of those. And it only took 341 days, which is kind of wild that it only took 341 days. It's even wilder that must be working days, because obviously the ETFs were in January of last year when they opened. We're in June of this year. It kind of feels like it's a year and a half. But anyway, must be working days there. 5 times faster than gold, and pretty much 5 times faster than some of these other ones. I don't know what they are. But it just goes to show just, the appetite that institutions currently have for Bitcoin. In my view, the reaffirming of why I'm sticking still with Bitcoin, why I'm still accumulating Bitcoin, and why I think it's going to have a very strong future within there. BlackRock et al. Are not going to be throwing this much money into it if they think it's just a fad. They could be putting in much other safer things which still produce results, such as gold. Maybe not as well, obviously, but it just goes to show just where we're going. And this article is going to lead into when I talk about Bitcoin dominance a little bit later on, because with so much Bitcoin being just hoovered up by the institutions, it does call into question how far that Bitcoin dominance is going to drop whenever altcoins really take over. And I think it's something we need to take on board. And I think there's some, I don't know, clickbait titles here. IBIT could surpass Satoshi by the end of the summer. What they mean there is that BlackRock could own more than 1 million Bitcoin by the end of the summer. I'm not necessarily sure that's true. We're on about 662,000. They'd have to get another third of what they already, well, actually 50% of what they already have to get there. I don't think they're going to achieve that in the next couple of months, but it's a nice title as it is. But they're well on the way, and I do believe they will overtake that Satoshi wallet within time. And then, Satoshi wallet's already 5% of the overall supply. They'll be 5%. MicroStrategy's 2.5%. I'm going to go on to it a little bit. I might as well do it now. BitcoinTreasury.net website kind of just lists all the Bitcoin holders. I don't expect us to run through the tables. Most of them are either ones you've heard of before or related to cryptos. Within the Bitcoin holders here, you can kind of see the size of the wallets in this column. MicroStrategy, miles ahead of most other companies, but Mara still at 50,000, XXI, Riot, going down to some of the other ones. But as you get a little bit lower, yes, they're smaller amounts, but other companies are actually looking to purchase more Bitcoin, and these are companies that, okay, they may have a massive change of heart, but it's unlikely they're gonna. Every single one of these companies is suddenly just gonna bail on Bitcoin, and so they're probably going to be holding these for a substantial amount of time. And I don't know if it does a total amount at the bottom. 808 and 19 Bitcoin and 1,000 Bitcoin held by these companies alone. I'm not sure why Reddit's on there since they have 0, but anyway. And then you got private companies. So they were the public companies. Then you got the private ones, which are all down here. 164,000 from Block 1, Tether of 100,000. SpaceX apparently have 8,000. You keep on going down. Then you got the governments. And so suddenly, actually, we've got 1.6 million Bitcoin locked up by institutions or nations that we know about. That's been reported. That's been updated with this. And I don't know when it was last updated. So it's actually quite a lot. Then you look at the custodians for the ETFs, which are not included in that figure. We've got a huge amount here. And for me, it just absolutely reaffirms that Bitcoin is a play. And okay, some of us still want to take the risk on altcoins bringing the bigger returns. Absolutely fine. No worry about that. I'm doing the same. It's 50-50 pretty much for me. But I do see Bitcoin as being that long-term hold. I can see it just, I can see it in 7 figures, not this cycle, but I can see it getting to those 7-figure levels. I can see it just to a point where it's going to be, honestly, bragging rights down at the pub, whatever, that you were the person that had the courage to buy Bitcoin before the institutions got in. I mean, God, for those of you that are around 2016 or earlier, then really is sort of OG levels from that. And I think that's going to become like a real badge of honor in terms of getting in there. So yeah, it's pretty impressive. And if we just look at where BlackRock are today, as I think I mentioned to you, Total balances, wait for it to come up. Yes, 662,000 Bitcoin, in a year and a half, $76 billion worth. Obviously, it's going to fluctuate with the price, but pretty impressive. And we look across the board, there's been a couple of red days from BlackRock, but generally black over the last 3 weeks. Fidelity have actually been doing quite a bit of selling. It'll be interesting to see how today turns out for the markets, but there we are. I'd love to understand the thought process with people like Fidelity, who actually do have a decent amount, but they have large sells and then they have large buys like following the following day. But anyway, that's for another time. And then just a final thing to talk about, because I've mentioned it for the last 2 weeks, Circle's IPO. It's up and running. So thought it'd start at $30, I think, actually listed at 63. Got as high as 140. We're seeing it pull back to about 110, 107 at the moment. I'm not in it right now. As I say, I think it's going to be a shit show for a couple of weeks. Generally, IPOs are. I'm just going to let the dust settle. And if it ends up settling higher than what it is at the moment, we just accept it. And the reason I accept that is just, we talk about what the United States are doing in trying to, bring regulation to cryptocurrency, bring legitimacy to cryptocurrency, particularly around Bitcoin. And I've made this argument for the last 2 weeks about Circle's IPO. But one of the big things that the United States are doing, other countries are going to follow, is trying to understand the role of stablecoins. And that Genius Act that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, back in May, passing through the Senate, that's going to be a big impact. And ultimately, Circle, they are looking to become the legitimate crypto stablecoin. I'd say globally, but certainly for the United States and how they're positioned with the USDC. There's always questions about Tether. And Circle is trying to get their ducks in a row. And I still stand by the fact that I think that stablecoin is going to have a huge part to play within the crypto sector. And so this, for me, one feels like a better play than MicroStrategy, because maybe we can position ourselves as earlier investors than just lumping in with that. But we've also got just such a plethora of opportunity with how stablecoins can be used. And if Circle and USDC continue with sort of getting their ducks in a row, not just in the United States, but in Europe and elsewhere, then I think that's only going to bolster where it's going. And you can have a look at, I just Googled the Genius Act, but generally just looking at sort of all of these news articles over the last couple of weeks, just about stablecoin regulation, legitimacy, the Genius Act itself, and how they're looking to try and change the market structure to just incorporate that. It just feels like everything is actually being lined up quite nicely. And so, as I mentioned, Circle have tried to go for IPOs in the past and been knocked back. Now they're being accepted and it's been approved because the Genius Act's on the table. No, it's because the United States are seriously looking at how they can control this, and they want to get in on the ground running. And then you add on to that, only a couple of days ago, and it's the final news article, don't worry, we'll move on to something else a bit more exciting later on. Your SEC chair, Paul Atkins, there was concerns with all this regulation. They were going to regulate DeFi platforms. He's come out and actually said, no, the right to have self-custody of one's private property is a foundational American value that should not disappear when one logs onto the internet, effectively stating that they're not looking, or they're going to look for special discompensation. God, I can't speak today. To try and avoid, onerous regulations of DeFi, which again are not something that I particularly use that much at the moment, but a massive W for the sector and for cryptocurrency itself. In actually, we've got a crypto-friendly, crypto-forward-thinking SEC chair that isn't trying to punish some of the core values of why cryptocurrency is so successful and loved in terms of its, anonymity, sort of. And I think, that's the right step in going through. So another little positive news nuggets, if you will, just that he made from a speech there, which I think, again, is just helping provide some positive momentum going forward. So that's kind of the news or the thoughts on some of the sort of more detailed news activities. Let's just jump into price action and where Bitcoin is. And I mean, most of you are not new now, so you know what this chart looks like. Interesting to see that Bitcoin was at 108 800. It's at 109, 800 now. Really trying to re-challenge that level. But let's just have a look at where we were. So I like to just sort of say, where were we when we spoke last and what's happened since then? So we spoke last here. That candle there. So we pretty much taken out all of that box. We had a tiny little sliver to go. Next candle took it all out, which is why it's grey. So we can get rid of that now. We'll just move it to the side so it's out of the way. Get rid of this arrow. And then what happened? Well, we had the Elon Trump breakup. And thank you to, I think it's Havinder, who said he liked the thumbnails. Do you know what? ChatGPT does make it a little bit easier. Although I had a falling out with ChatGPT, I do digress. They wouldn't let me create a logo with the term MAGA in it because they thought it was a strong political stance. And no matter how I tried to reword that, they wouldn't let me do it. So I had to create it myself. But anyway, I digress. So we had the wrestling match between Elon and Trump. But just look at where price fell down to. I have not changed that box. All I did was extend it out. Price fell down. I guess it wicked into this liquidity zone. Okay, these long liquidations, these degens that had set it up back in sort of May when people were going long after this breakout. They thought they'd escape, but no, come back down, eating a little bit of liquidity. But generally, the bulls, showed some more strength there and bought, so they didn't get liquidated. And we see it kind of bounce off that level, and so this level's still intact. Yes, obviously it's a lot stronger at the 100K level, but it's built back up here again. If you look here, this is the level we're talking about now. So this is, 104, 100,400 down to that 93 level. So just bounce for it strongly. And then look where it's gone to from there. We've had that strong reaction. We were talking about being in no man's land with fib levels. We've come straight back up and we've run straight into the 2 level on the fib. 109,774 is where that level is. Let's call it 110 for cash. And also, what have we run into? We've run into the short liquidation levels. I mean, look how thick that is. And this hasn't been built up since we got to that 110 level. Now, it's been building up since May. And so we're really building up. So we've flown straight up there. Obviously, then the bears didn't want to get liquidated. So they've started to try and drive that price back down, selling as they go. And it just shows you, if I still stand by it. Obviously, I do a lot of market maker stuff as well, but I like to have this just as a big picture of where I think market makers are going to move the price to. And it just happens so often. It really does. And I just stand by that at the moment. We do have a very large level up there, through the all-time high, up to about $1,000 above the all-time high at 113,650. It'd be interesting to see how we go there. But unlike that Tau candle I showed you earlier, kind of liking this candle here. Obviously, we've had that dip back down, nearly down to 108 flat, but looking very strong over the last few hours. Still got 4.5 hours to go on this candle, so anything can happen, obviously. And let's not forget, any word I mentioned, tariffs going to change how that looks one way or another. But still pretty good to see. And let's just have a look at a naked chart, if you will. So this is just clean chart here, and it is on the weekly time frame. Basically where my head is effectively the bottom of the bear market in 2022. And I think this just looks, on the weekly time frame, a very clean chart. There's no EMAs or anything on it. It's just it there. But let's just have a look, So hopefully you can see it. Let's just move it this way, so I'm pretty sure. Let me, bear with me. Yep, you can see it. So we've got the bottom of the bear market down here, which is right next to where my camera ends. We've had that breakout from it, from 15,000 to effectively 30,000. Strong move, got us started. Then we had a nice level of consolidation. I'm not talking like a couple of days here. These are weekly candles, so months worth of consolidation. Boring, not really too sure what's happening. Nervous every time it moved a couple of thousand, but consolidation nonetheless. Then, after that period of consolidation, strong move up again, going from the lows of 25,000 up to around about 70,000. Then what did we have? Another period, fairly similar in duration, really, of just sidewards chop action as we try and, just sort of find our feet and then we move back up. And then we've had another strong move out from there. And this doesn't look as strong because it's on the logarithmic chart, but we've gone from 70,000 to 110,000. This strong move here, I don't know why it's done like that, that strong move there. And what we've ended up finding now is, was this the consolidation for a couple of months? Or, and I think probably it's more likely this, are we still in that consolidation period? And actually a similar kind of time frame is going on. And maybe we're just waiting for that final, well, next move up, shall we say. And whenever it happens, so, you know, we may end up coming back down, we just consolidate and then we have that move up. What I would say is that could actually be, it is this was the consolidation and this is the move up, you know, and these moves up, but we can't know that. We need a strong clear of this all-time high. We had a good retest of 109, which we managed to break through, but we've stalled. We now need to see a strong move up, and then we can say, right, that was a consolidation. But regardless of the duration of what we're currently in at the moment, it's just following a very similar pattern to what we've seen over the last couple of years. And now it's on the weekly frame with no other noise around there. There's nothing necessarily too concerning about that. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least say one thing whilst we're looking at that naked chart. And that is, you know, where my head now is, down here, we had that bottoming pattern, that W formation. You know what I'm going to do now. This is rise 1. This is rise 2. Potentially this then is rise 3. And wait a second, are we actually in an M formation? We don't know that either. You know, we're at that kind of level. I'd be remiss not to mention it. Don't think we are particularly. I do think we're closer to that top than we necessarily think, and it's something that we definitely need to keep an eye on. And really the only way we're going to know if that M formation is coming out, you know, I'm just giving you it as I see it, I'm not going to dwell on it, is a breakdown there. We'd have to actually come back down to, well, I'd argue even here 75,000, let's call it. That's a lot of time between where we are now and where we are there, but we're on the weekly time frame, you know, we need those big gaps. So that's something that we have to bear in mind. There are 3 rises. Market makers like to work in 3s. It's, you know, we've had that pullback within here, retested the previous level. We've seen it come back up. We haven't quite broken through clearly that all-time high. We're stalling. We start to see it falling away. It could just be, as I mentioned, because we're consolidating and we're building for the next move. So you don't react, but if we lose this, then we have to consider what that could mean for us. So, as I say, we remiss not to mention it, but that is something that you can certainly see on the weekly time frame. We throw the 50 EMA on, which we've used in the past as well, and I think that just paints a much better picture of where we are. 50 EMA on the weekly time frame, it's a great kind of indicator of where you are in a cycle. You're in a bull market, you're in a bear market. You're north of it, you're in a bull market. South of it, you're in a bear market. Chopping around it, you know, we've got a bit of indecision. And except for about 2 months, we have always been above this thing. There's a little period as we were coming out of that bear market where, yeah, okay, we ran into the ground with it, but you can hardly say we lost it. Fine below it. We had that wobble beginning of April this year, back down to it, bounced cleanly off it. And so, you know, again, if this is going to come back down, for me, if we're going to range, I'd be using this level and I'd be tracking that level as a weekly close of where we're going to be. Okay, we might wick through it. We might close ever so slightly below it. But I'm thinking actually, you know, that 85,000 is really as low as I would like to say we may end up going. I don't like to dwell on that, but I think, you know, as we look at that there, and it'd still remain good. Of course, we don't want it to go down there unless you've got some cash on the sideline and you're wanting to buy a little bit more, then fair enough. But that's where I could see that going. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else on the chart. I don't necessarily think that there is. But yeah, what I would say is, for me, Bitcoin 110,000 at the moment, it's in a great position for us because we're waiting to see whether or not we can make that move up. And it's highly, you know, we're at the top end of this level. And if we can break it, then I think not the sky's the limit. I'm not getting carried away here, but I think that move up will be strong. That move to 120 will be strong. Okay, and we can make that there. And if we don't, it's nothing necessarily to worry about, because one, there's trading opportunities, and two, it's something we have seen time and again on this bull run. And yes, each time we've been in these, every drop has felt painful. But then when we look back at them, once we've broken out, you'd give your right nut if you were a man and you still got two nuts to be able to buy at some of these prices. So we just got to bear that in mind. Sorry, I don't know why I went down that analogy, and there we are. Right, let's move on to another chart. Someone posted this in Discord today. It was JJ. Sorry, with everyone's names on Discord, I can't remember everyone's. This is from Ben Cohen into the universe, and the tweet's relatively small, so I thought I'd just blow it up. I've kind of drawn it myself. We have talked about this in the past, but I think it's worth just going over again for those of you. I appreciate that not everyone is deep into crypto Twitter like I and other members are, but what are we looking at here? So this is the Bitcoin index, okay? And this is the entirety of Bitcoin's price action. Well, almost. It starts 12th of October, 2009. So it's pretty good. And we can kind of see where it is. But the theory of what Ben was talking about and what the discussion was on Discord is the red line that you can see is the simple moving average. It's not the EMAs that I typically use. It's a simple moving average. And it's the 200 weekly moving average. And what Ben drew up effectively is the three previous market tops have all occurred when the 200 simple moving average breaks through the previous all-time highs price. Sorry if that sounds a little confusing. We'll go through it here. So what does that necessarily mean? So I've tried to draw it up with circles and everything else, but back in 2011, we had an all-time high of $30, okay? Now, it's relatively new then, so we didn't have a 200-week EMA. Price dumped back down in the bear market. We started to build back up, and then we start to get this 200 EMA, and this is what we're following. Don't worry too much about price. This is not a price prediction. This is a time prediction, this one. So we're following where the 200 EMA is. And when the 200 EMA crosses the all-time high from the previous cycle, so from 2011, we're now at the end of 2013, what we can see is if we take that line up, that matches with the all-time high of the 2013 cycle at $1,200. Okay, it's happened once, nothing really to go from then. Then we move through to a bear market, we then get into the bull market, and again, price starts to move up. We're not bothered about price, we're looking at time here. So now, as we see, the 200 EMA is moving. As the 200 EMA crosses this yellow line, which represents $1,200, the previous all-time high, and I've marked then the vertical, it coincides with the December 2017 bull market top of 19,800, whatever it got to. Okay, so that's 2 for 2 right now. That's looking pretty good. So then we look, as we're following across, we've got the 2018 bear market, we've got the chop in 2019, and then we've got the climb out in 2020. We get to 2021, remember, it's not about price, it's about all time. This is about dates. So yeah, we had 64,000, but the 200 EMA was nowhere near that one. We get that retest, and then actually what happens is we get the 200 EMA. Now, this is where it falls apart ever so slightly. Maybe it's because of the chart I'm using or whatever, but actually it doesn't cross the EMA until, in my opinion, late December. But the all-time high, early November, is here. It's in that circle, in that cone of area. But you can kind of see as the 200 EMA gets close to 20,000, it marked that top, roughly, in 2021. So it's moving now through. So now we're kind of, okay, well, how can that help us here? It's kind of hard because we're going to have to make some assumptions. We've got the 200 EMA. I used to have an indicator, I don't anymore, that tracked the 200 EMA. I don't know where it's gone. But anyway, so we've got this 200 EMA. And remember, with the 200 EMA needs to cost $69,008. It currently is sitting at 49,000. So there's 20,000 for that still to climb through. So, someone just dropped something in my house because I showed a large bang. So I've got a few, Janet and John sort of things here. So we can kind of extrapolate where it's going to go. I don't know what this angle is going to look like, because it is, if Bitcoin price moves up, this will get steeper. If it starts to stagnate, this will get flatter. If you just draw it straight out and it just follows its typical trend, where's it cross that level? It's going to cross that level April next year. But if we are expecting a bull run, I am expecting that to lift up slightly. We just don't know the angle. And it's kind of like thumb in the air sort of territory, isn't it? I've just done it like that. We can see large kinks up, similar kind of kick. This is just pie in the sky, doesn't necessarily matter. So then we're saying, right, well, that's the level there, so we can put the circle on it. We then need to draw the lines. We can understand what the date is. And this is giving us a date of around about mid-November, which kind of ties in with where I think. Now, what it doesn't do is it doesn't tell us what the price is going to be. So I can't put this blue circle. It could be there, it could be there, it could be absolutely anywhere. But from a time point of view, it's something that you could have a look at. Now, how do you use this? Because that's really, why have I just wasted 5 minutes explaining it? This is not something that you have as your go-to first thing you look at when you're looking at TradingView. One, it's on too high a time frame. Two, it's not really telling you that much. 3 times we've seen a Bitcoin peak, and in those 3 times, this has tied in 98% of the time. We've got to knock a few percent off for what happened in 2021. So this is just something that you're like, oh, okay, yeah, the 200 EMA has actually crossed that 69,000 level. I need to pay attention. Now, what else am I seeing? And then what you're kind of looking for is, well, you can't really use this chart because as the price falls away, because it's 200 weekly level, we're still seeing that climbing for quite a while. And if you wait until it crosses over again, you're back down to, that low price. So you can't just base it on that. But you can just have it in the back of your mind of, okay, we've hit that level. I'm not switching completely bearish yet. However, I do want to just start to entertain more conversations about whether or not we've peaked. And there may be other things. We might see peak mania. Your hairdresser might recommend Fartcoin to you or something like that, which makes you think, wait a second, why are they talking about it? Whatever it may be, this would just be another indicator for you to think, okay, that's okay. So it's not something I think to say you need to check every week. I think you got to just bear it in mind. Just have a look at where the trend. Just have. If you've got the package where you can have a number of indicators, just have the simple moving average set at 200, but just hide it, and then just every so often just bring it on, just see where it is. Might be a good way to do it. And just draw. You don't need everything else. Just draw up a line across for 69,000. That's all you're looking for. Gets close to or hits that level, maybe it's start time to rethink where you are of it. So just something to bear in mind there. Something that I should have talked about a second ago, but I'm gonna have to talk about it now, is chop is not getting too carried away in Q2, maybe even Q3 to be fair, of each year. So what I've done is I've gone back 11 years and I've kind of just highlighted a 5-month period from effectively May to September. And within that period, I would argue most times, all we actually see is price pretty much either, starting and finishing at the same place. Maybe it only has one move down and one move back up, or it has several, but it's just generally chop within those periods. So last year, we knew we trended sideways for a lot, many more months than that, but it wasn't till October and we get towards the elections that we saw that move up. The year before that, in 2023, similar kind of thing. All we were faced with was chop. We started April at 29,000 and we ended September at 28,000, and we had a move up, but we lost it. Bit of chop. Similar kind of news here in 22, bear market, but still chop. Obviously a strong move down, strong move back up, strong move back down. It's exactly kind of the same. I know we fell lower, but all we did was ended up at ranges we were already seen within that time period. In the bull market in 2021, you kind of get the picture we had here. Yeah, so strong move down, chop sideways, then we had that move back up, and we basically started the month at 46,000 and we ended it at 48,000 5 months later. So just sideways action, but still stuff to do, still plenty of opportunity to trade, but do we really see anything within there if we're just spot holding? No, not necessarily. 2020, I think this is probably a better example because we started this one as a wick up here at like 9,500 and we ended it as a wick down here at like 10,200. It does feel like it was flat, move up, and then a sharp pull back. 2019, that's when we ran up to 14,000. Everyone got excited, but we soon lost it. Chop again in the bear market 2018. Now, I'll come back to the yellow one. This one here, I was going to make yellow, but we never cleared higher than the move up. So we had, down at 400. It's in 2016 now. Moved up to 800, wicked all the way back down to 400, ended up at 500. So, yeah, we were, 20% higher than what we started off with, but at the same time, we had that big move in and around. 2015 was the same. 2014, strong move up, came back down. We ended up pretty much exiting that period at the same time. And then I didn't bother the others. So the only time it was different was on the parabolic run up in 2017. Mass retail entries, not much institution, big choke points with lacks of exchanges. So there was a lot of FOMO caused because people couldn't get onto exchanges when they wanted to, and that real frenzy through 2017, first real retail cycle, and it didn't work there. We started May in 1,500 and we ended 3 times as high at 4,500. That one completely broke the rule. So out of the 11, one time have we not experienced chop. And it takes us to where we currently are at the moment. Now, this can be anywhere. We don't know where it's going to be. But actually, we've only just ended at May. We could have May, June, July, August, September of just chop. Now, we'll have strong months, we'll have bad months if that's the case. And so I kind of like, I just temper my excitement when we see big moves up. And I temper my nerves when we see those moves down, particularly in this period here, because it feels like actually this is a bit of a messy period. Whether it's a, sell in May and go away mentality or whatever, the reality of it is when you look at the monthly returns, that May to September has the most inconsistent months. Now, there are years where actually you have strong reds, and there's a couple of years where it's strong greens over that period. But generally, it's just a smattering of reds or greens, which gets us that chop that we were talking about, particularly August and September. June and July, we do see normally a good run up, and then August and September generally kind of correct whatever move we've had. So, just bear that in mind that actually, we may get 115, 120. We may end up getting back down to 100 again, whatever it may be. Don't get too worried. Don't get too caught with excitement. If you're planning on trading, plenty of opportunities to trade within that volatility. But if you're just spot holding, just sort of bear that one in mind as you ultimately go through. Now, just to put another spin on that, and I won't go into it in too much detail. We have CPI data tomorrow. Normally a very excitable day for all markets, traditional and crypto. Forecast, the year-on-year CPI is actually forecast to be slightly higher at 2.25. So we're looking at a 0.2% increase. So if it comes in at 2.25, we've already allowed for that. If it comes in lower than that, the market's going to get super excited. They're going to be calling for Powell to cut the rates. Yeah, and that's just going to create that FOMO of people wanting to get in before the rate cuts happen. But if we hit above 2.5, there's going to be a lot of people saying, oh, Powell, he's got an excuse in a week's time not to have to do anything, to just sit back on the data again. So tomorrow's CPI information is going to be important. I've just noticed that Trump, he was not on this earlier. He's speaking in 10 minutes. Who knows what he's going to talk about? But when this appears on here, I get worried. Anyway, so CPI data tomorrow, just bear that one in mind. If you have any open trades up, again, just have a look at where your stops are within that, because as I said, the week after, Wednesday the 18th, is FOMC day. Now, we don't get what the forecast is yet. However, if we go on to FedWatch, it's a 99.9% chance that they're going to stay at the same rate. So we've only, just increased the determination over the last couple of weeks of where that's going. Now, everything could change tomorrow with that CPI print. So I don't care what this says even on the day of it. Good indicator, yes, but it could change. So that will be in mind, but just bear in mind, I know a lot of people are waiting for the money printer to be turned back on. May not get it. Now, we would have one more Fed meeting, and I think it's the 31st of July before the summer break, and then we wouldn't have one till the end of September. So it's not the end of the world, but for those of you that are solely relying, not solely, but really relying on the printer to turn on for this to turn around and alt season to start, we've really got 2 occasions within that block of chop that I've talked about. Otherwise, we're kind of going to be waiting till October before we really see anything from that one. And if we're then looking at the 4-year cycle, that's only giving us 2 months after that. Now, wild things can happen in 2 months. As we go back to this 2017, September, we were down at one stage 3,000, and within 3 months with 7x Bitcoin. I mean, wouldn't we love to see that? Now we're not gonna 7x Bitcoin from this position. Well, if we are, we're all gonna be very happy. Anyway, right, let's have a look at some charts. I said there was no questions and there's nothing in RT chat. Let's have a look at some charts. BTC Tau, and where's the dominance? I thought I had dominance set up. Did I not talk about dominance by mistake? Nope, not that one. Won't be that one. Just a second, so bear with me. Nope, that's... Okay, yeah, it's this one. I do want to talk about dominance. Sorry, I've done it a bit backwards because I forgot about this. Let's hide that. Okay, so this is Bitcoin dominance on the weekly time frame, okay? And I drew on the 3-day chart. This line was actually, it was a bit more down here, and it was kind of connecting that. We're now on the weekly, so I'm just trying to look at it from a much bigger perspective. Sorry, it was there. I don't want to redraw it, but it was going in that direction. Because it was on the 3-day. And this is really what I'm looking at. This channel, and people are talking about rising compressions and rising channels and everything else, but Bitcoin dominance has been in a rising channel since the beginning of 2023, and it's kind of stuck to this channel very well. It broke out of it when altcoins had its best rally on the election results, the Trump pump. But it soon regained it, and it's just lived within this channel again. And I just stand by, actually, my view is this is the channel to watch. So yeah, at an extreme, if we lose it tomorrow or this week, we could get down to 62. But the longer we meander here, this is just coming up. Well, we'll get back to the levels we were previously at within, as a base level that we're currently at now within no time whatsoever. And I can just see Bitcoin just still working within that channel. And I go back to the amount of companies that own Bitcoin. I go back to the insatiable appetite of BlackRock with the ETS, with Saylor and how often he's buying, with other companies, Metaplanet, GME, the others. I did see Saylor jokingly suggest that Apple should start buying Bitcoin. But you get the point I'm trying to make. Bitcoin dominance really does seem to be sticky. It seems to be staying stronger for longer. And I just go back to that is probably going to cause issues for altcoins. I'm being generic with that altcoins, and I'm not bad-mouthing altcoins. I think this has been a stance of mine for quite some time. But until this really breaks, I'm going to hold on to Bitcoin as a hedge from that. And let's just put that into perspective. If we look at past cycles, so I've got 2 in the Bitcoin dominance that we can have a look at. So the red line indicated here is just when Bitcoin dominance had that waterfall effect. So there's no real science behind how that date's chosen. But from that date, we then just extrapolated the time to when the known all-time high occurred. So it doesn't matter about how far Bitcoin dominance fell. I'm just referring to when Bitcoin had its all-time high. So in 2017, it was effectively just under a year. It was like 10 months, 294 days. And that was from, again, the amount of dominance doesn't necessarily matter because that was 95% because there weren't as many altcoins around. We fast forward to the 2021 cycle, and Bitcoin had a nice strong run up at the end of 2020, went from 10,000 to 40,000 in no time. But at the end of 2020, we had the break. We had this waterfall moment, which, again, you can see a clear break there. This is not just like small candles tipping over there, just sharp drops down. And again, you look at from when it broke end of December to when we had the all-time high for Bitcoin, 69,000. It was effectively 11 months, 10 and a half, 11 months. So similar-ish timeframes from where we are. But if we then work it backwards from where we are, and we're going with that 4-year cycle, and the cycle high is going to be in 1st of December plus or minus 30 days. So, we can run the figure and just put 1st of December to where are we now? We're only, we're less than 6 months out. We've not seen that waterfall effect. So the two things are on my mind here. Either the 4-year cycle is broken and it's going to be a much later topping for Bitcoin outside of that, or actually, where I actually think we're going to be, we're not going to see that waterfall where there's too much energy, there's too much money, there's too much commitment from players that don't mess around in Bitcoin. And actually Bitcoin's going to just keep on hoovering up, and we'll just get mini cycles. And 2 to 4% drop is still a good move if you're positioned in the right tokens. But that's where I'm seeing. And until that pattern breaks, that's how I'm just going to believe this is going to be. And I'm going to just position myself to continue with that. So that was just sort of the view I had on Bitcoin dominance. Now we go to Bitcoin, and we just have a look at price action here. So on the daily, again, oops, what a coincidence. The bad news event from Trump and Elon, where did it take us down to? A nice retest of the 50 EMA. I mean, okay. It was a vector candle, immediately recovered, and we just carried on up as if nothing had happened. Nice strong retest and a move back up. We hadn't had a retest since April, so that's nice to see. And bearing in mind, we'd spent the best part of 2 months prior to April under the 50 EMA. We broke through it quickly with a green vector candle, and we've hit it back here. Now, in terms of cycle counts, again, you could argue it's 1 because we finally hit the 50 EMA and we're about to go on the second, or actually, this is a W. That's cycle 1 move, cycle 2 move, cycle 3 M formation. I'm going to stick with a hybrid of the two really, and suggest that we're not breaking down. But we can kind of see what's left in our wake. This is a daily time frame. We'll have a look at low time frames in the middle. We still have this green vector candle down here, 98,000 to 102, which, coincidentally, it's kind of this trap liquidity down here, or long liquidation zone, down there. And so there's definitely a play that could happen there. Daily time frames, obviously, it does take a little bit longer, and we do occasionally leave vectors behind. It's not unheard of. But if we are in that range consolidation I sort of alluded to, then I think we will come and retest this. I think we'll claim minimum the 50%. We might wick 3 to do it. But yeah, I think that is something that you should definitely mark up as a point to look at. Now, once we get down there, there's conversations need to be had about where we're going lower. And we talked about that 87 level on the weekly time frame being probably a key one to look at. But that's certainly something to have a look at. We go down on the 4-hour time frame. Just trying to get it so you can kind of see. And this gives me even more confidence that actually we are going to at least retest, let's just call it 105. Because look at the past history whilst we've been ranging within here. Whilst we've been in this ranging pattern, which goes back to beginning of May, so on the 4-hour, look at how many multicolored candles we've got. Ignore the whites, ignore the green, ignore the grays. Every other candle is a vector candle, whether it be green, red, purple, or blue. Every single vector candle has been recovered, bar what we've seen this week. And that is the candle from yesterday, all of them from yesterday, really, off the announcement or the confirmation that China was meeting with the US. And so it is my view that actually, if we're ranging, we will clear these. We will reclaim these. When? That's another bit of TA. But I'm just saying that just looking purely at the vectors, they will get taken again. And so there's an opportunity, I suppose, for a short. I'd be looking on lower time frames for entry points within there. But but there's also an opportunity for buying. And so I actually didn't buy my Bitcoin this month because I was away until Friday, and by Friday we'd already had the move up here, so it didn't happen, unfortunately. And I just made the conscious decision that this month I'm going to wait to see how the vector candles play out and maybe look to try and get back in. I mean, it's only going to be sort of $3,000 difference from where we are here, but grand scheme of things, that should hopefully work out quite nicely for me. So 4 hour side, I do look at that. The positives on the 4 hour have to be, we've come through the 50 EMA, strong green vector candles through it, and we've been holding the 10 EMA nicely there over the last couple of candles. Yes, they're vector candles, but they basically just cancelled each other out with a pink and a blue. But we can see where that's going. So we've got the 10, the 20, and the 50 holding us through those levels. So if it does start to move down, don't be too greedy, because as that's happening, this is going to continue to trudge up. We may just wick through there to clear that. And that could be over in a matter of seconds. So just bear that one in mind. I don't think there's anything really to see on the hourly time frame. But again, you know, what it does say is there is actually a vector candle up here. So that move up to 11,000 now on the hourly, that could be a play, you know, move up there, especially with CPI data tomorrow. Looking at shorter time frames, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze as well. We could see that move up and reverse back down, but we still got plenty of vectors down here, you know, maybe even down as low as 103. Let's not worry about that at the moment. Let's just see where they sort of, and we've got them down here at 105. I think that there's a possibility, definite possibility, maybe it's the right term, possibility that we might see some sort of move down there. So that's sort of how I'd be using the vectors of where it's going. Kind of looks like a bit of a double top here at the moment as well, whatever you want to call it. That wick, I'm going to have to zoom in a bit so you can kind of see it. Is there, but no real clean. I'm just trying to see, you know, that double top, but we'd have to start going down on the 15 and having a look at some real low levels. But, you know, some form of bottoming pattern down here, move up, consolidation, move up, consolidation, move up. Maybe we are seeing some sort of M there. It's a bit messy on the 15. You see that on the 15 though, and we don't normally go this low, but again, look how, it's hard to see. Look how many vector candles there are there. And these vector candles, just because on the 15 doesn't mean they're on the hour, and vice versa. But again, look how clean it is within the zone we've been in. And so when we look at this bit which we left behind after the Elon Trump drop, you just think, if we can't clear this level, these are going to get taken out. That's what they've done it time after time after time. You know, within this level we've been in, going all the way back to that May time frame. And can you see, strong move out and we leave them behind. So strong move out, okay, I'll accept we leave them behind. But if we can't and we break down, I think we're going to take them. You know, that's just how I look at it. And again, we're kind of looking at that 100 level, but a vast majority of them round about that 105. So just something to bear in mind on Bitcoin. Right, I'm conscious of the time. Let's get on to Tau. So just want to have a look at Tau on sort of a naked chart. I'm going to drink a water as well first. Because I appreciate that with vectors and EMAs and everything else, it can be a little overwhelming sometimes. And there was another little debate about strength of trend lines, horizontal or diagonal. But I actually think Bitcoin got some really strong, not Bitcoin, BitTensor has got some really strong horizontal trend lines. And let's just draw some here. There's one pretty much where we are now. So there's one there. There's likely one here. Sort of wicks, and you can kind of see why I'm drawing it. I'd argue that there's one here. Again, with sort of how it bottoms, bunches here, support and resistance, some there. And then maybe one here. So taking in this bottom, and then where we are with this inverted head and shoulders, almost that wick. I mean, over the 6, 7, 8 months you can see on the screen at the moment, looks like some pretty strong levels. But actually, if you take in some more data, these really look like good levels for BitTensor in terms of just previous interaction with price. And okay, we get some wicks through them. a bit further away. But you can kind of get the general gist that even just with support and resistance, we can see some bunching at the 4 levels that I've drawn. And I don't think any of you would disagree with, oh, no, I wouldn't put that line there, or that doesn't look like a support level. It doesn't need to be anywhere within that vicinity. I think there's some clear evidence that actually is it's a fairly clean draw on it. So we're battling one of those levels at the moment. But see how we bounced off that previous one at 450. So there's, again, opportunities to play. And yeah, okay, I might have got out the sidestep a little bit wrong on the way down here, but I shouldn't have done it anyway because I was on holiday and I just couldn't help myself when we broke this level. And there was other things I was talking about with EMAs and everything else that made it do it. And I should have really looked at that as being an area to strong bounce. And it has, and it's proven itself. And so you just got to kind of bear those ones in mind. But, for any of you that did miss that, YOLOing now is not necessarily the best move to do, because we've had this strong rejection today. The 4 hours still to go, so anything can happen. Not looking great. Battling this level at the moment, and we've not got even an EMA on the chart. But it looks like actually these support and resistance lines can help. Now, I just want to clear that, because I think there's something else that you can see on the clean chart, which I did talk about last week. Now, last week, I talked about these 3 moves up. So this one, and this one. And I was saying that each time we had that strong move up, it got, lower. So we were making lower highs. And then what did we see this last week? So we were down here when I mentioned it. So we were here when I mentioned it. And then we've had that move down, which again, here, and here, we've had that strong move. And this candle isn't over, but as it is at the moment, strong move up, but can't clear the previous highs of what we've been seeing. So, are we just getting some exhaustion from this at the moment? Maybe we might see that next move back down. Now, if that's the case, don't worry, don't fret it, because there's definitely an argument to be made that actually what we're seeing, I'm not saying it's an uber bull flag, don't know where you want to draw it from, but we are seeing, massive move up from 160. We've seen some form of sort of consolidation as it comes back down. And yeah, we would expect to then see this break. Now, don't get excited with how high it may break, but hey, maybe that is the level we get to, sort of like a new all-time high around about 900. We have that move. But as it currently stands at the moment, those 4 now moves up, they worry me, because we haven't been able to find that strength to break through even a previous local high every time. What we've seen is exhaustion come back down, and that seems to be happening today. Now, again, even today's price action, it could reverse tomorrow. We gotta expect, after moving so strongly from, let's face it, 340 to, almost a 33% move, 30% move up to 450, we're going to see some sellers take advantage of that. And that is likely what we're seeing at the moment. But what I can't say for certain is whether we just do that, we finally break through this, or we come back down. Now, past performance being an indicator of future movement, you would argue that maybe that is the next move, and we're looking somewhere around about 330, 340, which, ties in with that kind of area here. Maybe there's some confluence there to have a look at. We don't normally go into support and resistance when we get to this stage, but I think that's something that's worth having a look at, maybe worth just exploring. I haven't sidestepped again. I'm just going to sit on my hands with this one. I did say I was going to do it, and I have sold some alts yesterday after some moves up. So I've got some money on the side that I was going to look to trade with. Maybe there's an opportunity to trade, to hedge myself and trade this move rather than mess around with the spots. If we now have a look at everything on what I prefer to use, daily time frame with all of the gubbins there, what we can say is these aren't vector candles. These last 4 candle moves up, they weren't increased volume particularly. So there's no trap liquidity necessarily there, but we can kind of clearly see. Now, what we have got is the 10, the 20, and the 50 pretty tightly bunched together. I mean, ultimately, we're talking about 400 to, well, and the 200 there to 380. And this is where I was falling foul. I was waiting for this move down. It moved down, I sold, but I didn't get to buy back. I bet you if we have a look at it, just do this for my insanity now. So yeah, so it moved down. This for me would have been, because I was an hour ahead, 11 o'clock at night. I was probably drunk, not looking at it, gone to bed. And by the time you wake up in the morning, you're already back above the levels. But anyway, that was just for me. Let's go back to the daily. So yeah, so it's actually a good amount of EMAs to hold that up. Now, previously, the 10 and the 20 have done a good job at that. And, you know, the only time we lost it was last time, getting down. And you could argue the 50 quarters. And then, okay, we broke through the 50 cloud, but not for long. And we came back through. So again, you know, that cloud may be a good indication. That's only at 370, to be fair, 367. But something to look at. But now if we go and look at the 4 hour, and this is a shame, because when I looked at it this morning, this was going to prove my point about vector candles. It kind of has, because these were forming. And I was like, we'll take these vectors back. And we already have. And we're already working through this green, because look, much like Bitcoin, in this period of range, and there's so many vector candles there, and not one of them in the period of range can we hold. You know, they've all been cleared out at some stage. And I stand by, I think these will get cleared out. These will get cleared out. I think we'll get back down to 380, 390. We might spike down into it and we go back. But I'd really be looking, you know, if you wanted to be adventurous, I'd be looking there. I'd be looking at 360, and maybe even, if you really wanted to, the bottom of that vector candle there at 347. Because if we went on lower time frames, God, 5 minutes, that was a disaster to do. Let's have a look. Actually, there isn't. They're all here. Okay, fair enough. I thought there might be a tiny smidge of the vector there, but there wasn't. Okay, all right, let's go back to the 4 hour. But there'd be potentially levels to look at if you really got down again to sort of target through. But I do think these ones from 384 to 416 will likely be taken. If we can't break up north and we're still in the range, we're seeing that bull flag, everything ties through, that we're just going to clear out that vector liquidity, and we're going to just reset and go again. Now, it is lower high and lower lows in this little thing at the moment, so you know, the 800, 200, the 50 couldn't hold it last time, haven't held it, you know, previous couple of times we've sort of encountered it. I know we only encountered the 200. I know we encountered it twice, it wicked through, broke through the second time. So maybe we see it again. But that's just something that I would consider where you position with that. I'm not in them, you know, I'm not sure how subnets are doing. I've seen a few flippant comments in the subnet threads that basically just says Bitcoin, BitTensor pumps, alphas dump. BitTensor dumps, alphas dump. So I don't know how well those are doing. You know, you need to micromanage those. I think that's a clear strategy within it. So you have to have a look at it. But some of the strong ones, Fartcoin and SPX, looking very good. I mean, SPX is one I actually own, so obviously I'm a bit more attached to that one. But this one has been the best player over the last 7 days. It's up nearly 40%. But Fartcoin's not that far away from it. I bet if we refresh that, it's probably doing better now. Sorry. Yeah, a little bit better. But yeah, memes seem to still have captured some form of imagination within those ones. And I think in terms of SPX, this is looking very strong. You know, this is what we talk about. We've talked about this plenty of times. There's vector liquidity down here, but it's had that strength to move away from it. 50 EMA has held almost every time, lost it a little bit, double bottom, able to continue the trend. So I think we will come back down. I think we'll reattack this 50 EMA at some stage. I think there's an opportunity there, and I'll probably look at a trade rather than more spot purchases from that. But look at it, you know, look at how everything's fanning out nicely. 10, 20, 50, 200, 800, all moving in a nice direction. 4 hour time frame on at the moment, but looking strong. Fartcoin, I mean, This has had a strong reversal and reaction from this. It's not been as consistent, but it had a much stronger move than SPX prior to this sort of move back down. But again, it's coming out of its downtrend at the moment. 200 EMA catching, 800 EMA catching it, and then we're breaking through key levels 50 and 200 with vector candles, fanning out the rest of these, looking strong. And I think there's plenty of vector candles here at the all-time high for it to re-attack. So whatever the reason behind meme coins still looking pretty strong. Other altcoins, not necessarily. I mean, we've had some good movements. I can't deny Ethereum's had some good movements, but we're still in that range. We have got above this. This is the Fibonacci level, I think. Yeah, 618. So we've got above the 618, which is good to see. Last time it made it above it, it couldn't hold it. So we need to see it holding it. But as long as it stays above 2730, I think we'll be good. Solana, down, but it is making a recovery. But I mean, it's a long way off from where its all-time high was. But even its local high, 180, still something to go. Trump coin, yeah. What are ones? Ones that I'm still in a little bit. So Link, I think it's got, running into trouble at 800 EMAs. So this is kind of the opposite, where there's a few things that is sort of not quite fanned out yet. We need to get above that 800 EMA there. There is a vector to do it, but whether or not we can get through, have to wait and see. Ondo, yeah, still holding by the 200, 800 still there to go. So I still think, and this just goes back to my total 2 analysis. A lot of altcoins are struggling at the moment to do it, to do anything with it near the same. Downtrend here at the moment. Maybe it's on the up to find some sort of but I would see some sort of reaction. There's a fib here. There's a vector zone there. We're already at the 200 EMA. Near looks like it's probably going to run out of steam in one of these three things fairly soon. And hey, I like to say that, because if I'm wrong and it pumps higher, I'll take it as a win. But yeah, something to definitely consider there. Right, it's been quite a long one here, nearly 80 minutes. I think we'll knock it on the head there. Do appreciate everybody tuning in. I'm not sure if there's anything on Thursday with Simon being in Paris. I don't know how long he's there for, and I don't know how long it lasts for. But we shall have to just wait and see. I'm sure Lewis will keep us up to date. Please feel free to comment, chat, tag me, whatever, in Discord. I know it feels a bit quiet sometimes in Discord. There's only like a select few talking, mainly because a lot of people are either just in subnets or they positioned themselves a while ago. But don't be afraid to start up conversations. We're more than happy to explore new ideas and everything else. Enjoy the rest of your... Oh, I didn't go to that. There we go. Enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the rest of your evening. You got any questions, feel free to ask me. See if we can try and sustain it. Obviously, the levels I identified earlier, what I'm looking at. But yeah, just keep on believing. That's it. That's all we need to do, is keep on believing and stacking. That's it. Anyway, that's enough from me. I'll speak to you all soon. Cheers now.